Ellison, assuming for the sake of argument that your client got notice of the foreclosure, were there not steps that your client could have taken to prevent landing in the predicament where your client found himself? If you had $190,000 equity in this house, couldn't your client have gotten a loan using that as collateral, paid the taxes, and there never would have been a sale?
In reality is that many times the foreclosure process itself does prevent practically individuals from going out and being able to dispose of that property on the terms that they themselves would do, because we've crossed over into the foreclosure process. This process that we're talking about today is a bit unique in that the actual taking of the property starts before the foreclosure process is, before actually taking title. And our position is that the taking of the title itself is what starts that process, and that's the value that it should be on that particular day.
Could you spell out for me step by step what you think the county was obligated to do? So they foreclose. All right. Step number one, they foreclose. And then what?
At that point, there would be what's called a forfeiture, which is a unique aspect of Michigan law. There's a forfeiture. Then there's a foreclosure where they assume and take title, complete title to the property.
Okay. So they have title to the property, and then they pay you what you say is the fair market value of the property.
At that point, the government has two paths in Michigan. One is they can go down and another government can purchase that property for its fair market value, the actual known fair market value, or it goes to an auction process. Our position is that when it went to the auction...
Okay, so then they pay you the fair market value. Is that right? That's what you want?
If it went to the government side, yes. If the government purchased it, correct.
And then the county has an inventory of unoccupied houses, and it has to sell those houses on the open market?
It would sell them on an auction process, yes. Where we think that the court, or where...
On an auction process?
They've decided to use an auction process. They're not required to use an auction process.
Well, do you think this auction process produces the fair market value?
This one does not, in all instances, no.
But, do you think an auction process generally produces the fair market value?
I think
houses are not usually sold by auction.
They can be. I think it can reach auction value. Speaking from my own anecdotal evidence of my work in Michigan, auctions can reach fair market value. But it didn't here.
Doesn't? Okay. If they use the auction if they use a fair auction process, that's it. They're okay, even if it doesn't yield fair market value. What you say is fair market value.
No, and that's where I was going to just lead to.
Okay.
This is where the shortcoming is in Michigan's system. Is in most typical foreclosure systems, there is a sales confirmation or review process that's done by the court to confirm that it's usually called a confirmation sale. At that point, for example, North Carolina is a good example of this. The former owner can go back and point out either the unfairness of the sale or the inadequacy of the price and say, don't confirm this sale because it doesn't reach fair market value in these circumstances.
Okay, and then what happens?
At that point, the court reviews the competing evidence that's between the various parties.
The court decides what the fair market value is.
That is correct.
You get the fair market value.
That is correct.
And then the county has to try to sell the house.
That's correct.
And what if they try to sell it on the open market and they can't get what was estimated to be the fair market value?
Then the Fifth Amendment requires that they pay the difference on this being the just compensation that's owed.
And during all this time, they've got this inventory of unoccupied houses. They have to maintain them. They have to make sure they're not vandalized. They have to maintain insurance on these properties.
If by the government deciding to collect as a debt collection practice, deciding to use in rem civil forfeiture as a basis to collect on the debt, rather than, for example, suing or going after personal property, going after bank accounts, that's the obligation that they assume in that particular circumstance. Yes.